Picture this: 80,000 screaming fans, blinding stage lights, and the unmistakable voice of the king of rock and roll echoing through a packed arena. But on this particular night, something unprecedented happened. Elvis Presley, the man who commanded. Stages like no other suddenly stopped mid-song, his eyes locked on a single face in the sea of thousands. What happened next would redefine what it truly means to connect with your audience and remind the world why Elvis wasn't just a performer, but a human being with an extraordinary heart. The arena buzzed with an energy that only an Elvis concert could generate. Sequined jumpsuits caught the light as fans swayed to the rhythm, their voices joining in perfect harmony with their idol. Elvis, resplendent in his iconic white cape, embellished with golden eagles, moved across the stage with that signature swagger that had made him a global phenomenon. His band, seasoned professionals who had witnessed countless performances, played with the precision that came from years of touring together. But Elvis had always possessed an almost supernatural ability to read his audience. Even in venues holding tens of thousands, he could spot individual faces, catch personal moments, and somehow make each person feel as though he was singing directly to them. This gift wasn't just showmanship, it was genuine connection, a rare quality that separated him from every other performer of his generation. On this night, as he launched into one of his beloved ballads, his keen eyes swept across the crowd. As they always did, he loved these moments, these intimate exchanges within the grandeur of a massive production. The audience was particularly responsive, their energy feeding back to him in waves of applause and adoration. But something in the third section caught his attention, not the usual enthusiastic screaming or the reaching hands, but something different. Something that made the king of rock and roll pause in recognition of raw human emotion. The band continued playing, expecting Elvis to pick up the next verse, but those closest to the stage began to notice their performer's sudden stillness. His microphone hung at his side as his gaze fixed on one particular spot in the audience. The backing singers exchanged glances, uncertain whether to continue or wait. But Elvis had entered that zone that true artists know where performance transcends entertainment and becomes something far more meaningful and profound. There, sitting in the middle of the crowd, was a woman whose tears weren't of joy or excitement, but of deep, unmistakable sorrow. While thousands around her celebrated, she sat with her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking with grief that seemed to emanate from the very core of her being. Elvis's trained eye, accustomed to reading audiences, immediately recognized that this wasn't fan hysteria. This was genuine pain, the kind that cuts through all pretense and performance. Without a word to his band or any explanation to the confused audience, Elvis set down his microphone and walked to the edge of the stage. The massive venue, which moments before had been filled with thunderous applause, gradually fell into an eerie silence as people began to realize something extraordinary was happening. Security personnel looked nervous, unsure of their protocol for this unprecedented situation. "Ma'am," Elvis's voice carried across the arena without amplification, his natural projection reaching even the furthest seats. "Ma'am, would you please stand up?" The woman looked up through her tears, probably unable to believe that the king of rock and roll was speaking directly to her. The entire audience turned their attention to this one person, creating a moment of collective focus that seemed to bend reality itself. When she finally stood, her face streaked with tears, Elvis nodded gently. "I can see you're hurting, honey. Would you like to tell us what's wrong?" Sometimes sharing pain makes it a little easier to bear. The vulnerability in his voice matched hers, creating an instant connection that transcended the performer audience. Relationship. At that moment, the massive arena felt as intimate as a living room conversation between two people understood each other's capacity for both joy and sorrow. What happened next would be talked about for decades. The woman, emboldened by Elvis's genuine concern and the supportive energy of 80,000 strangers who had become witnesses to human compassion, shared her story. She had lost her husband in Vietnam just 3 months prior, and this concert, their planned anniversary celebration, was her first attempt to find joy again. She had come hoping Elvis's music might help heal her broken heart, but instead found herself overwhelmed by memories and grief. Elvis listened without interruption, his own eyes beginning to well with tears. Those who knew him well weren't surprised by this reaction. Despite his larger-than-life persona, he was known among friends and family for his deep empathy and emotional intelligence. When she finished speaking, the arena remained in absolute silence, 80,000 people holding their collective breath as they witnessed something unprecedented in entertainment history. "Darling," Elvis said, his voice now amplified as he had picked up his microphone again, "your husband served our country with honor, and you've shown tremendous courage just by being here tonight. Music has always been about bringing people together, about healing, and about reminding us that we're not alone in our struggles." He paused, looking around the vast audience. "Tonight, we're all going to sing for your husband, for you, and for everyone else here who's carrying pain there, trying to heal." The king then did something that no major performer had ever done before. He invited the entire audience to join him in a moment of silence, followed by a gentle, a cappella version of How Great Thou Art. 80,000 voices joined together, creating a sound that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Many later described it as a spiritual experience that transcended religious boundaries, becoming instead a celebration of human resilience and collective compassion. As the song concluded, something magical happened throughout the arena. Complete strangers began reaching out to comfort one another, sharing their own stories of loss and hope. The formal barriers between performer and audience, between strangers in a crowd, had dissolved entirely. Elvis had created not just a concert, but a community healing session that would impact lives far beyond that single evening. The woman who had been crying was now surrounded by new friends, people offering support, phone numbers, and invitations to coffee. What had begun as her most difficult night had transformed into a powerful reminder that human connection could emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. Local newspapers would later report that several lasting friendships were formed that night, and at least 3 support groups for military widows were organized by audience members who met during those remarkable moments. Elvis, witnessing the transformation he had facilitated, resumed his concert with renewed energy and purpose. But the performance had fundamentally changed. Every song now carried deeper meaning. Every gesture felt more intentional. The audience, having shared such an intimate experience together, responded with a unity and passion that created an almost mystical atmosphere. Musicians often speak of transcendent performances, but this night became the gold standard for authentic human connection through artistic expression. The concert continued for another hour, but the emotional peak had already been reached. As Elvis performed his closing songs, dedicating each one to everyone here tonight who's finding the courage to heal, the energy in the building remained extraordinary. When he finally took his final bow, the standing ovation lasted nearly 15 minutes. But it wasn't just for his musical performance. It was for his reminder that beneath all the glamour and celebrity, the most powerful thing any human being can offer another is genuine compassion and understanding. That night, Elvis Presley proved something that the entertainment industry often forgets. Audiences don't just want to be entertained, they want to feel understood, valued, and connected to something larger than themselves. In a single moment of authentic human response to another person's pain, he demonstrated the true power of his platform and left 80,000 people with a memory that would last their lifetimes. The story spread far beyond that arena, inspiring countless other performers to see their role not just as entertainers, but as healers and connectors in an increasingly disconnected world. Elvis had always been the king of rock and roll, but that night he became something even more meaningful, a reminder that our greatest strength lies in our willingness to care for one another. Ready to experience music that moves more than just your body? Share this story and discover how authentic artistry can touch the deepest parts of the human soul. Because the best performances aren't just heard, they're felt, remembered, and they change us forever.